Hey guys, thanks for checking out the My Career Path podcast today. I have another awesome guest, Jeremy Kimpton, who is a city manager and is just sharing his experience about being a mayor, being a city manager, and kind of finding his way into that role and sharing all the different things that kind of go into being and working in small local government. So let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome to the My Career Path podcast. Today, I have another awesome guest, Jeremy Kimpton. Jeremy, you're actually a city manager, right?
That's correct. Yeah, for Willard City.
Willard City. Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to talk with you, have you on the show, and kind of hear your experiences. Let's just start out with how long have you been working as a city manager there?
I just started with Willard. So this month, I've been doing it for 12 years. This is my 13th year, I believe. So I've been doing it for just a little while.
And you could say you probably enjoy it, right?
Oh, yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, let's kind of jump into your career path because I love hearing how people kind of started out, maybe as a teenager, working all the way up to where they are. Let's go with your very first job. What was that?
I started working at Wrightwood's Chicken Farm, moving chickens when I was 12, almost 13 years old. That's where it all started. Yeah. And it was a tough job. Every Saturday morning, they wanted you there at 7 o'clock. And so we did that. I did that for the better part of a year, I would say. And so,
is it like in Napoleon Dynamite where you're just kind of like slowly moving chickens, and then you count your coins at the end?
Yep, that's exactly what it was like. That's where they filmed that, where we moved chickens at. So yeah, that was
that was the same place.
Yep, that was the same place. Yep,
that's awesome. Yep. Okay, after you're moving chickens, growing up a little bit, what was your next job?
Yeah, so my next job was I got a paper out there about the same time. I think I was right around 13 when I got my paper out. And I did that till I was 15. But then at the same time, I guess I was 14, I started moving sprinkler pipe for a farmer and here locally. And then I got a promotion there to milking the cows. And
hey,
call that a promotion. And I worked for that dairy pretty well all the way through high school. And then along the way, I got a job at the grocery store, unloading freight trucks in the morning. So in the mornings, if I wasn't milking cows, I would unload freight trucks before school would start and come home from school. And, I'd get home from work, I'd go to school, and then I'd get home from school. And then I was probably 16. I got a job at, it was Greens Willoway. It was a little shoebox convenience store, and they sold chicken tenders. They were kind of known for the chicken tenders. And I worked those 3 jobs pretty well till I graduated high school. And so that was
how you were always pretty much starting early morning, get up, you go to work, and then you go to school, and then you have more stuff to do in the evening. You were a busy guy.
Yeah, I did. And between those 3 jobs, I very seldom had a day off. When I did, I played hard. But yeah, I worked hard all through high school.
That's awesome. I mean, just developing that like work ethic so early. I think that was not something that I had. A lot of the people I've interviewed, they're like, yeah, I started on the farm when I was 9 or 10, as soon as I could walk on my own pretty much. And then just kind of working for a while. And not that that's a bad thing. It's just, it very much teaches that, hey, we're here to work hard. We're going to do things. And when we set out to do something, we're going to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it did instill in me that if you want something, you're going to have to work hard for it. And there was nothing wrong with hard work. My kids have all pretty well started. I think every one of them but Cooper worked at the chicken farm, and they were all about that same age when they started working. All of my kids have bought their own cars. They've pretty well maintained them. I help, a little here and there, pay the insurance, things like that. But my kids all started working when they were pretty young too. I try to kind of instill that in them. They didn't work 3 jobs, but Cooper has worked 2. He works in the summers pretty hard, working 2 jobs, and then works 1 through the school years.
And that's just something that's going to like benefit his life so much, honestly. Yeah. Like if you have that kind of mentality of I need to work in order to get what I want, it just takes you so far. So that's really cool. Okay. So what about jobs after that?
So when I graduated from high school, I let a high school counselor convince me that I didn't have what it takes to go on to college. What I wanted to do in high school was I wanted to go on and be an attorney. I wanted to be a lawyer. That was kind of my aspiration at the time, I guess. But,
Hmm.
um, you know, working that much, school did kind of take a back burner. I don't remember my grade point average. I definitely wasn't an F student, but I wasn't an A student either. Um,
Somewhere in between
I
them.
I think I hovered in that, 3.0, give or take. And so
Nice. Good.
wasn't a terrible grade point average, I don't think, but I I was kind of guided into a trade school. So I did electrical for about 5 years. I moved to Twin Falls and I did electrical for 5 years, 3 years up there, a couple of years back here at home before I got married. But um, it didn't take me long to realize I didn't love doing electrical and I didn't love the layoffs. And of course, I am kind of driven, and to come home and wait till the next job comes, I struggled with that quite a bit. So
Mm.
from there, I kind of started hauling milk. I after 3 years in Twin Falls, I was engaged, decided to come home and get married, and I started hauling milk a little bit on the weekends and at nights, and whenever I could, just to kind of fill in those layoff gaps. And as the longer you're married and the broker you are, and the more the kids come along, the more I needed steady income, and milk hauling kind of
Yeah.
became that steady um, uh, revenue. And
Yeah.
so I
It was a
gravitated.
stable job that kind of you
Yeah,
could do.
yeah. And so, to be honest, I enjoyed it much more than I did electrical. And so I got an offer, from going from part-time milk hauler to a full-time milk hauler, and we took it. So we did that. I really hauled milk pretty much till 2010 or 11, somewhere in there was the last time I hauled any milk. So um,
Wow.
I ended up owning a business there, had an opportunity to lease on with the company and tried that for a few years, and that ended terribly. And so those were some pretty dark times when we tanked the
Pretty
business. And
rough, huh?
that's what kind of led me out of driving truck, hauling milk. That's when I went back, got my bachelor's degree, and then got my first job as a city administrator. And then from there, I um, waited a few years and went on and got my master's degree. So
Awesome. What'd you get your bachelor's degree in?
my master's is in public administration.
Awesome. That's way cool. And so that kind of pushed you into kind of the city administration,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the job. So what did it look like being in the city administration and kind of working in local small government?
Um, it's challenging. So the smaller the city, the more hats you're going to wear.
Hmm.
And so you go to these bigger cities, they have the resources, they have the demand. So you have a city planner, and his job is to take care of everything that's land use. All the planning and zoning goes through him. But when you're in the smaller cities, as a city manager, I don't quite get to step all the way away from planning and zoning. Or um, this job with Willard's the first time I've had a public works director, and really had department heads that I can lean into and rely on. In the past, I kind of was the department heads in all of those departments.
Hmm.
And so you kind of have to be what do they say, a jack of all trades,
Yeah.
but a
Master
master
of
of
none.
none. Yeah. And so that would describe me in local government. I know enough to be dangerous.
It's anything. Whenever a fire pops up, that's when, all right, got to call Jeremy to get it taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so you worked as a city administrator for a couple of years, and then how about after that? How'd you kind of move into the city manager position?
So there's boy, it gets a little complex when we talk about a city administrator versus a city manager. Typically, a city
Hmm.
administrator um, is really, they may be structured very much the same. Oh boy, where do I start? So, Idaho, for example, has by state statute city manager form of government. And and then so you have a strong mayor or you have a city manager form of government. Those are your options in
Okay.
Idaho. Utah is a completely different animal. Um,
Hmm.
Idaho gives council members statutory authority and the mayor statutory authority. Utah, the mayor's powers come from the city council. It's really, maybe you want to say, a commission form of government. Your
Okay.
councils kind of dictate to the mayor by ordinance what he can and can't do, and they do the same for a city administrator or a city manager. So city administrators are typically going to fall into the category of the mayor is still a strong mayor and still really is the CEO, if you will, of the city. And the city manager oversees the day-to-day operations. They make sure staff are doing what they need to do. They make sure that everything's functioning and working. And that kind of allows the mayor to maybe go focus on the big picture items, maybe be a little more ceremonial, shake hands, kiss babies kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so if you start talking about city manager, the thought process is that a city manager has a little more authority. So an administrator typically can't sign or enter into most contracts.
Hmm.
So, for example, in Idaho, if you're in a city manager form of government, the city manager has statutory authority to sign contracts on behalf of the city. Not necessarily the case unless that power is given by the council to the city manager. So, if you
Okay.
kind of get out here to the west, city administrators, city managers are just kind of now catching on. Um, and so their roles are very similar. You'll find that it's really just a structural thing on how they're set up as a city. So
Okay.
for me, to get back to your question, that was a little long-winded. Um, hopefully, you can edit most of that out. For me, I started in Idaho, and so obviously, to change to a manager form of government in Idaho, you have to have the voters vote that form of government in.
I was going to
So
say, I would assume that how they set it up is kind of however the city was initially
yes,
founded, and that's kind of how it
that's
stayed.
pretty much the
And in order,
case.
yeah, in order to change it, you'd have to have a vote or some kind of form
Yeah,
of democracy to
yeah,
change it to a different, whether to have that mayoral
correct.
power or keep it in the council kind of a thing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. I think in the state of Idaho, I can't remember. There's only, I think, three, four, five city managers in the state of Idaho. Everybody else in Idaho is going to be a city administrator, and the term
Gotcha.
is kind of used interchangeably. You'll hear people um, say, well, "I want to talk to the city manager," and really, it's just a city administrator. And so it's kind of a loose term. Back east and in the south, um, especially if you have home rule states, those typically have a pretty good structure for an actual city manager, and they're pretty well have all of the controls and powers that a mayor would have, and the mayors really are ceremonial. Um, but that's not the case. So in Franklin, it was
Gotcha.
just a natural thing to be a city administrator, um, and so when I went to Richmond, their previous manager, they called him a city manager, and I'm not really sure why, but as when I came into the scene there, they wanted to shift that over to city administrator. I think the mayor at the time was trying to maybe create a little bit of a division of powers, and I think he was using a name change to do so, and it was
Gotcha.
probably the technically correct thing to do. But yeah. So in my current role as city manager, I have powers given to me by ordinance, and I'm an official city manager. So
Gotcha. So, in working kind of in city management and whatnot, how important is it that you have that kind of bachelor's degree and the master's degree?
I'm not going to say it's a necessity. I think there's probably a handful out there that have little or no college background. Um, but I think it helped me quite a bit. Organizational skills are crucial. Um,
Hmm.
and being able to think and to have critical thinking skills is extremely important because you're going to come into a lot of discussions and a lot of situations where people are going to bring what they call are facts and are really opinion based, and you need to be able to kind of sort that out. So I think having some of the things that college gives you has benefited me, but I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen a job posting in my career for a city administrator or city manager that doesn't require at least a bachelor's degree, and typically it'll say master's preferred. So it's hard to say to do the job. I don't know if it's a necessity. If you're just good at those things, you have good writing and communication skills, you can probably get by fine. But you're
Hmm.
probably just going to be lucky to land that job. If you want to go out there in the recruiting process and actually land that job, you're probably going to need some kind of
Yeah.
you're going to need a lot of experience, or you're going to need some college background.
Yeah. Well, and that's what with a lot of the people that I talk with, they talk about. I think they mentioned that their degrees and their certificates and whatnot really help them kind of get in the door. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of hands-on training. There's a lot of, you just can't be prepared for everything. So having those skills to be able to think something through, to have that critical thinking skill, like you mentioned, I think college really helps kind of drive that home and say, hey, how
Yeah.
can I learn? And that's
Yeah.
really what school and education really helps you with.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Great. Well, what does your kind of day to day look like? Like, what were some of the things that you had to do this last week as a city manager?
Boy, it varies from day to day. I think that might be one of the things that has drawn me to it, is it is different
Hmm.
every day, and in a lot of ways. Um, so, and it will vary from city to city. It'll depend on the challenges that those cities are facing. But I think for Willard, right now, they're facing a lot of growth and they're getting a lot of pressure, and the small towns want to stay rural. There's always this
Yeah.
challenge between, everybody's heard about affordable housing crisis that's being batted around all over the United States, and Utah's no stranger to that. And so you've got the pressures of affordable housing and um, the pressures of communities who don't really want to change. They don't want to allow growth. They don't want smaller lots. They don't want higher density, and that is the market trend. And so um, so a typical day for me is usually dealing with any personnel issues. There's always staff that have something that they need help with, something that's going on in their department, something that they need some either approvals, or oftentimes it's just, how do you want me to handle this? And so you're dealing with those
Hmm.
things through your day. Um, you probably are going to deal with a resident complaint at some point, that some issue that you're going to have to mitigate through a day. Um, right now, like I said, I think I spend a lot of my day working on land use issues, dealing with developers, meeting with them, meeting with the city attorney, working through developer agreements and things like that. So it varies. Lots of meetings. Um, I spend most of my days in meetings, and so you're trying to fit emails and phone calls and all of the little crises that are going on in between all of those meetings. And so it's funny. You think, he's in a government job, he's 9 to 5. What a great job. And it really is not. Snow plows roll at all hours of the day and night. Water flows at all hours of the day and night. Mother Nature doesn't hold back and only rain or snow and create a disaster between 9 and 5. She usually waits till a weekend or a holiday or the middle of
It's
the night.
right.
So,
She waits till everyone's off to
yes,
say, "All right,
yeah.
yeah, now deal with this."
So people don't often understand that there really is a lot that makes the city go round. You see the two public works guys driving down the road with their arms hanging out the window, and that's their impression of people. And I don't think we've done a good
Hmm.
job as government to show we probably are always typically understaffed, and we're trying to wear several hats, and you're only seeing those guys drive by your home. You saw 3 seconds out of their whole day, and
Right.
so it's pretty taxing. Most days are pretty busy. It's one of those jobs you walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you look at the clock and think it's only been a half hour, and it's 3:30 in the afternoon, and you've got a whole checklist of things that you haven't touched that you needed to get done today, and now you're down to an hour and a half to get it done. So um,
Yeah, well, and I think that's a really important point with government and a lot of these jobs is there's so much behind the scenes that I don't really think about. I haven't even thought about when we get 4 inches of snow overnight, someone's got to be there in the morning to
yeah,
plow it on Sunday. Like,
yeah,
and who are they going to call? They're going to call the city
yeah,
officials and the city public managers and whatnot,
yeah,
and I'm sure that's got to be tough.
yeah. And people, and it's funny. Um, People want to talk to the top person. And I've learned, it's funny, you would think that would always be the mayor, but it isn't always. If they think it's something that the mayor's not going to take serious, they want to talk to the city manager. If they think it's something
Hmm.
the city manager is not going to take serious, then suddenly the mayor is the person, or a council member is the person they want to talk to. And so yeah, you're often filtering out um, a lot of, and sometimes they're very relevant and very valid concerns. Most of them are,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's annoying because you're trying to not be annoyed. But I've always taken the approach I know we're kind of getting a little off subject, but I've always kind of taken the approach too that a resident only sees their world is where their house is. That's all they see. They see what their neighbors are doing. They see what goes by their home,
Yeah,
and
it's their street.
and it's their street. Yeah, and for us, we're trying to maintain, thousands of homes and hundreds of lane miles of streets, and sometimes we get short sighted and we forget that though that might feel frivolous to us and unimportant as staff, it is a big deal to them. And so I always try to keep that in mind and try to hear them out and do what we
Yeah, I
can
think
to
that's a
try to
really good
mitigate
point.
that.
Is as a resident and as a person, you really have your own world, and everyone's kind of
Yeah,
got their own world. But
yeah,
as a manager and in kind of city government, you have to see the whole big picture, but also
yeah,
realize that the residents, their big picture is their house, is their
yeah,
street,
yeah,
and that's what they really care about. So yeah,
yeah,
that's a really good insight. I like that.
yeah. So and you just have to balance that. You have to weigh all of those things out. I was in a public hearing one time, and of course, we're looking at raising property taxes, and a gentleman stands up and says, "Well, I just sooner you not maintain the road in front of my house. I'm sick of paying for it." And I don't remember if it was the mayor or council member said, "Well, you don't want asphalt?" No, I'd be fine with the dirt road. There's nothing wrong with the dirt road. And one of his
Mhm.
neighbors happened to be sitting down a few chairs down, and she says, "Well, I disagree with that. I like having my road plowed. I want to have an asphalt road that's in good repair." And so you
Yeah.
have those extremes. You have people who want little to no government services, and you have people who want more government and a higher level of service from government. So
Well, yeah.
it's a
Well,
it's
and
a
I also
balancing
just
act.
think politically, I mean, there's the difference on the different sides of the aisle. How do you kind of balance that to try to make sure everyone's kind of needs are met?
It is a challenge, and you know, city managers are balancing a mayor who has
Hmm.
his opinions, and mayors typically are kind of your leader of the city, and they've got direction and agenda items that they want to see done. You have council members who either agree with those or disagree with those or kind of like them and want to change them. And so you're always going to be pulled different directions. And for a manager, it's extremely important to stay as neutral in that as you can, to stay objective. And,
Hmm.
staff, my experience has been over the years, sometimes staff want to feed certain information and certain controversial or decision making processes that they want to kind of sway that political to their liking. And it's hard as staff to really step back and go, no, we're here to carry out those political desires, I guess, if you will. And we
Yeah.
need to give the good, bad, and ugly of the decisions and let them be the decision makers. And so I've politically really tried to stay kind of neutral and more objective and allow the process to take its course. Staff's jobs to be an advisory role. Our jobs to advise and to counsel and to bring things forward that maybe a council member hasn't thought of, and make sure that they have all the good, bad, and ugly. And then I don't know that it's bad if we give our opinion, but we also need to not walk away and get political when the decision doesn't go our way. And that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard balance to
Yeah.
strike.
Because I think that's what a lot of people think of when they think of I want to work for the city or the government, whatever it is. You like they have to stand on one side of the aisle or the other.
Yeah,
And I don't necessarily think that that has to be the case, but there are
yeah,
some things where you have to kind of give a little bit, take a little bit, and do what you think is best and
yeah,
help people out as best you can.
yeah,
Um, and so I just think that's interesting that that's something else that you kind of have to juggle as a city
yeah,
manager.
yeah, yeah. You do. You've got it coming at you from every direction in that position. We talked about the staff and their needs, and they're the same way. Your public works only sees the issues that they're facing in public works. They forget that there's funding that needs to go to fire. There's funding that need to go to a police department.
Hmm.
The administrative staff, and um, so you're always trying to find that balance and helping everybody understand that look, there are other areas that need our resources that can't all just go to one department. And so yeah, you've got employees and you've got residents and you've got elected officials, and you're trying to keep everybody compliant with whatever state laws and state codes that the city needs to follow, and federal. And So yeah, it's a pull to try to stay
Yeah,
neutral and centered.
that's cool. What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
You know, um, I've always been service oriented. I enjoy the service side of it, and I enjoy, there's something about driving on a road after the city plows have cleared it off, and or a new project comes in, or a lot of the projects people don't realize, to get a water project or a sewer project done takes years. When I was in Franklin and we did a sewer project, it was essentially a winter storage lagoon. Seems very basic, very simple. It was
Mhm.
5 years before we turned the first clod of dirt. And
Wow.
so many meetings and so much time and back and forth and negotiating and bids and working with engineers, and then you feel like the project's never going to happen, and then one day you stand back and get to see that come to completion. And so for me, it's just seeing all of the hard work come together. Government moves slow. This is where people get frustrated, is that we move slow. We're
Right.
not the private sector. And this is a challenge I see when elected officials come in. You think about it, how many times have you heard elected officials say, we're going to run this like a business, and we're going to make this
That's
more efficient, and we're going to clean up all these inefficiencies, and we're going to make it better.
that's
Here's
right.
the
That's all those
problem.
promises that come in. Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And,
it's just like,
and
let's just drive all these things. It's like there's a
yeah,
reason government kind of moves slow.
yes. Yeah, and that creates your transparency. That slow and tedious movement, that is what creates transparency and provides
Mhm.
the public an opportunity to see what we're doing and to witness what we're doing. And so you're exactly right. Government wasn't designed to be fast and efficient. And that's hard for people to wrap their head around. And so oftentimes, that labor of love of just fighting and fighting and fighting to get something completed, and then standing back and seeing that result. That's probably my most rewarding part of it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I'm sure there's a lot of projects that there's so many timelines and things that are going on at
Yes.
once
Yeah.
that to see something finally be like, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
Look at what we've accomplished. I think, yeah, that'd be really, really cool
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah. It is. It's fun. It's the fun part, is trying to bring all of
Mhm.
that together, bring the people together, get everybody on the same page, build a team that can function well, and see all that come together in the end.
What would you say is the best advice for someone looking at either city management, city administrative work as a career? What would you say for them?
Uh, um, it is hard work. It's challenging work. It's stressful. You've got to be able to hear people, listen to people. Um, I When I was working on my bachelor's degree, I had to do one of those self assessments, and one of the things that said I wasn't good at was listening, and that has stuck with me all these years. And I've really tried to take a step back from that. It was funny, the night I took that, we were at the dinner table, and I was sharing that with the family, that it's just kind of getting their feedback. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but the resident called and just reamed me. It was, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. We're eating dinner at the table, and just
Uh,
reams me and carries on. And I hung up on him. That was back when we had flip phones, and I just
that's
closed it
right.
and set it down on the table. And that was so and so, and I'm not going to put up with that. And I don't remember, one of my kids said, "And there are those good listening skills, Dad." And I kind of laugh about that, but over the years, I have really tried to hear people out. I try to not cut them off and tell them, no, you're wrong. It's not like that. And what I found in my career is that people want to be heard. Take the time to listen to people. When residents come in, they're fiery mad. Oftentimes, if I just shut up, let them speak their piece, they'll calm down, and then I can say, okay, well, how about we work on how do we fix this for you? How do we make this better? What is it that you want me to do to try to help you? Because when
Mhm.
people are mad and want to engage like that, you're not going to get anything productive. So patience, understanding. You don't know what that person's dealing with before they walk in your door. They may not even be mad at you, but you're the one that's going to get it. And I think being
Yeah.
understanding to other people's stresses and like I said, probably most of the time that is valid. And if people come in and don't tell me that they have a concern or a complaint, I don't know that. I don't know there's a pothole in front of your driveway that you keep hitting every time you pull in and out if nobody tells me. And so
Right.
I think being open minded and you know and appreciating the process, I think all of those are important um, characteristics to have if you want to get into that line of work.
Yeah, and I just think when you're talking about listening and how people want to be heard, I think sometimes when people have that kind of outlet to basically vent or get their problem kind of off their chest, some most of the time I would say it kind of solves itself in a way. You know, they kind of
Yeah,
like, okay, finally, someone hears me, someone knows I have a problem, something's going to get done, and they'll calm down quite a bit. And just having that ability to lend an ear, let them finish their piece, and then let's talk about, okay, how are we going to,
yeah.
solve this issue? What are we going to do to fix it?
And if it's an issue you can't fix or can't help them with some kind of a resolve that's acceptable to them, explain that to them.
Hmm.
I've kind of always had a saying in our office that it's not really saying no that's bad. It's how we tell people no that matters. Making them feel
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Now I do. I understand why you can't allow that or why you can't fix that. Or. I would say when you see stuff on social media, people complaining about their local governments, 90% of that is a lack of understanding. They just don't understand the dynamic that the city's in to try to provide whatever that service or whatever those needs are.
Yeah. If someone were to apply to work at your office, to work with you directly, what are some of the key either skills or experiences that you kind of look for in a resume or in an applicant?
Sure. So if you bring your resume in, I'm going to look at that, but I'm not going to put a ton of weight in that resume. What I want to know is the person behind it. I can make myself look pretty good on paper. Any of us can.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, credentials are important. Abilities, skill sets, past experience, those are all important, and I am going to look at those and weigh those out. But I've worked with people they'll look at a resume and that's all they want to see. They'll do a quick interview as a technicality just to meet the person and base their decision really quite heavily on a resume. I've watched
Interesting.
mayors, city council members do that, but I want to know the person. I want to bring them in. So when you come into an interview, I make it very casual, very quick, because what I want them to do is relax a little bit. I want to hear the real person,
You want to
not
see who
what
the
they.
real person
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
try to kind of, you know, get to know the person. I want to know what their attitude is like, their personality. How are they going to handle people? How do they get along with people? That's what I want to know. I want to know who they are, and I can teach you the skills, but I can't really make a person change who they are.
Hmm.
And in this line of work, it's pretty important that somebody can work with the public and be um, pretty pretty easy to work with. So
Good.
that's
I
where I
think that's
start.
that's great. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think a lot of people have that kind of mindset. A lot of people that I talk with who do hiring and whatnot say, resume kind of helps get in the door, but ultimately
Yeah,
that interview, who you are as a person, that's what really helps kind of cement that position and go, is this
yeah,
someone I can put on my team, someone I can trust?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And references are good. I I I don't often check references unless I get into where I have two really good candidates. The hard part with references, not everybody's like me. I try to find people that will give them a good round picture of me. I try to find past bosses that are under no obligation to bolster me up anymore, that can say, yes, when he worked for me, he was a great guy. Yeah, not everybody's going to try to give a well-rounded reference. They're going to pick people that they know is going to give them a good, glowing review. I've always tried to pick people like past bosses, past coworkers that can maybe give the good, bad, and ugly of me, and that's not always the case. So
Hmm.
references are good; they're important. I've used them, but um, I really want to get to know that person. I want to know what they're going to be like to work with, how they're going to work with the coworkers. That's probably for me. That's probably the most important thing. I can work with people that are difficult. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if you come in mad and you smack my desk and you are irate. Um, I'm typically not going to, unless you catch me on a bad day, maybe you'll engage me, but 99% of the time, that doesn't bother me. But most coworkers aren't going to put up with that. There
Yeah.
has to be that ability to have employees that can gel together and work together. They don't have to be friends. They don't have to like each other. They don't have to go to dinner after work. But I do set an expectation that when we're at work, we're friendly with one another. We're supportive of one another. We
Yeah. We're working as a team.
we're working as a team. Yeah. Yep.
Great. Any books or anything that you'd recommend that I think have really helped you or given you inspiration, or mentors in that sense too?
From the mentor angle, I've always tried to look at my previous bosses or all of my bosses and try to find something in them that I can learn from.
Mhm.
Even my bad bosses, I've learned a great deal. Maybe I've learned more from them than I have the great bosses. I don't know. I've never really had anybody in this line of work just take me under their wing and advise and counsel me. It has been kind of, from that standpoint, kind of a lonely journey. I've kind of had to forge my own way. But I do think there's a great deal you can learn from other people, watching other people, listening to other people. I'm huge on self-development. I do like to go to any webinars, trainings. I try to get to like the city managers conferences and gain any personal development, leadership skills that I can. I think that is important to know and understand leadership.
Mhm.
Boy, books. I should have been ready for that question. I'm not a huge reader, and there's a lot that I have read over the years. One that has always kind of stood out to me was uh, Good to Great. I think that's what it's called. I
Mhm.
can't remember the author
Yeah,
off
with
the top
Jim
of my head.
Collins.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
Jim
that's it.
Collins.
So I've I enjoy that book. I will read about any leadership book out there. Local government's a little tougher.
Mhm.
Building a team and getting employees to work for you, and that is going to always be the same in any organization. Sometimes applying that in public versus private sector is a little different, but that's a book that's always kind of stood out to me. I've always really enjoyed that book.
Yeah, I love that book too. That's one that I've done a review on. I love how it just talks about, making sure people are in the right spot, making sure people
Yeah,
are going the right place, and that we have a direction. and
yeah,
and just seeing how those qualities of good to great, it's not necessarily, hey, they were so expert in their field or anything like that. They were really good listeners. They had really good traits, really good, soft skills that help them work with people and surround themselves with people that help them get to where they're going.
yeah,
I agree. Good to Great by Jim Collins. Fantastic, fantastic book.
yeah. It was kind of the book that made me really step back and decide I needed to get to know my staff one on one. You do kind of
Hmm.
get a feel for how they work and how reliable they are, or maybe they're not. I don't know. But for me, that was the book that made me step back and go, I need to know my team personally. And it changed everything for me. I took that approach probably eight years ago when I first got to Richmond, maybe even before that. I don't remember when I read that book, but it's been a little while. And
Hmm.
there was we have a sewer plant. Well, we had, I guess I'm not at Richmond anymore. I'm still transitioning my mind out of that, but they have a very technical sewer plant. Um, that's it, in its day, it was a state of the art plant when that was built, and it requires a certain technical skill set. And we had a gentleman that was doing a phenomenal job, and he resigned to go on and start his own business and reach some of his goals and dreams that he'd had in life. And I can't begrudge the guy for that, but he left me in a real spot. And I was trying to figure out how do I fill that position. And I had one employee who um, he just kept coming back to mind, but he had really zero sewer background.
Hmm.
But I'm like, man, this would be good for his family. It would be a raise for him. That would be good for him. Um, so I kind of knew his personal circumstances. And I thought, he's inquisitive. He likes to learn. He likes to study and research. He had worked at a service department before, in the parts department at a couple dealerships. So if I couldn't find something on the internet, he could. If we needed a part for a piece of equipment, we all went to him. And I called him into my office and said, hey, there's an opening at the sewer plant, and I think you would be a great fit. And I remember the look on his face was like, you're crazy. And he said, I couldn't do that. And I said, I think you could. I think you can. And I said, I think it's a perfect fit for you. I needed to close a revolving door there. I needed somebody I knew would stay there and learn the job and hopefully stay till they retired. That was my
Mm-hmm.
goal. And he has asthma, and he's like, I don't know, I've the asthma, that's a real humid environment. And I said, I'll make you a deal. We're going into the fall. You try it for 6 months. If your asthma, and I felt like, I don't think the asthma is what's keeping you there, but I said, give it 6 months. If you feel like after 6 months it's not a fit for you, I'll change. It's the best thing I did. And I remember the mayor raising his eyebrow when I said, this is who I'm putting down there. And so we're going to replace him over here in the public works department and in maintenance. And so I'm going to move him down there. And the mayor was very, very uneasy. But I think today they would all tell you it was the best thing I did for him and for the city. And so he still has a lot to learn, but he's come a long ways. And so, and he loves it. It changed his whole demeanor and how he interacted with people, how he works with people. You can just see the happiness that it brought him. And I think getting to know him and maybe feeling more comfortable in that than he did was important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jeremy, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with me your career path, share with me everything that you've learned and continue to work on. One more question before I let you go. Is there any, funny story that you've had over your work years that you'd be willing to share with us?
Oh yeah, there's many. One that has always, they have teased me about, all my staff have teased me about over the years, one of many. So I used to have a plant that sat on the corner of my desk, and I'm not real good. That's not my thing. And so I had my assistant like, this is your job, take care of this plant. And so my two public works maintenance guys, both were farmers on the side. So one day I get this weird plant growing in this next to the other plant that's in there. And what is that? And it kept growing. I'm like, that looks like corn, but how would corn be growing in my flower pot on the corner of my desk? And they would come in and they would, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. And I had decided I'm just going to let it grow out and see what it is. And we'll see where it goes, And I could not for the life of me figure it out. And I thought, I had started to think, well, maybe the plant reseeded somehow. That's what I thought. And they were laughing. And I started to sense something was up by their constantly asking about it. Have you figured out what it is? And I'm like, well, it looks like a corn plant, but I can't see how corn would grow in here. What had happened was it started to die. And my assistant finally cued me in. She's like, well, you're right. It is corn growing in there. And I said, how did corn get in there? And I blamed it on her. I said, well, when you redid the soil or whatever, you must have got a seed or something in there. And she said, no. One of your guys had a seed in his pocket of his jacket, and he was sitting at my desk with his hands in his pocket, and I must have been distracted or looking something up for him or something. And he had planted that seed in that flower pot, and it grew. And they have teased me about that for 8 years now. In fact, my last day there, they brought that up and teased me about it. And we've always just laughed about that. I was right, but that I wouldn't let myself acknowledge that it really was a corn seed that
really was corn.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Probably that's the one that seems to be a reoccurring laugh around the office.
Yeah, that people in your team just keep chatting about that they grew corn without you knowing.
Yeah. They're pretty proud of themselves.
So there you have it, guys. I hope you're able to learn something from Jeremy. If city government is what you're interested in, hopefully it helps show you what the different challenges, what the different work kind of looks like. And if it's something you want to go into, go for it. I think it's an awesome opportunity for you to work in your neighborhoods, in your communities, to kind of help build the city. If you like this episode, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I have a YouTube channel as well as a podcast that's on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to leave a 5-star review. I'd love to get your guys' feedback and kind of grow the channel to reach more people. I'm just trying to help people see what careers and opportunities are out there, and hopefully this is something that you guys can enjoy and continue to hear back from me on a weekly basis. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later. See ya.